Welcome to Nazir Fears, where fear finds you. Do you dare to enter a world of unspeakable horror and chilling mysteries? If you love creepy true stories, urban legends, haunted places, and terrifying experiences, you're in the right place.
Like, subscribe, share, and click that bell icon.
Megan Lawson had always prided herself on being rational, grounded, a woman of science and curiosity rather than superstition. Yet the moment she stepped through the crumbling gates of the Whitmore estate, she felt something she couldn't rationalize. The house loomed ahead, larger than she remembered from her research, its dark windows like hollow eyes staring into her very soul. The wind moaned through broken shutters, carrying a scent of rot and damp earth, and Megan shivered despite the late summer warmth. Local legends had whispered about the house being haunted, cursed, or worse, abandoned for reasons no one dared to mention. Megan had dismissed it as exaggeration, until now. Every instinct screamed for her to leave, but a compulsion, as old and ancient as the house itself, drew her in, pressing her forward over broken stones and weeds tangled like dark veins. The interior was worse. The floorboards groaned under Megan's weight, echoing unnaturally through the silent halls. Dust covered every surface, but beneath it, she could sense movement, subtle shifts, a rhythm in the air, a pulse in the shadows. She moved cautiously, flashlight cutting weak arcs of light through the darkness. Doors hung crooked, peeling wallpaper clawed at the walls like frozen hands, and the air was heavy, thick with the stench of something she couldn't identify. Megan's breath came in shallow gasps, and yet she pressed forward, drawn by a compulsion she didn't understand. That's when she saw the door. It was unlike any door in the blueprints, any photo she had examined. It was solid, old, but preserved, dark wood polished as if someone had recently cared for it. Yet there was no handle, only a faint groove where one should have been. The basement that shouldn't exist lay beyond it. Megan hesitated, her fingers brushing the cold wood. The instant she touched it, the air shifted, heavy and electric, like the room itself had noticed her. With a deep breath, she pushed open the door, and darkness rushed forward, thick and absolute, swallowing her light. She descended the stairs slowly, feeling each step as though it carried her deeper into another world. The basement was vast, impossibly so, far larger than the house above. Stone walls stretched beyond sight, and the ceiling arched into darkness, fading into black. Megan's flashlight caught glimpses of alcoves along the walls, each containing objects she could barely comprehend. Jars filled with substances that shimmered unnaturally, dolls with limbs twisted into grotesque positions, masks with hollow eyes that seemed to track her every movement. She felt a presence before she saw it, a consciousness, patient and aware, circling her like a predator that didn't need legs or arms to follow. The first time Megan saw it, she froze. The faceless entity was tall, humanoid, impossibly thin, and impossibly still. Its form seemed to shimmer in the edges of her vision, blending with shadows, as if the basement itself had given it shape. Megan's heart pounded in her chest, but she couldn't move. Her mind screamed at her to run, to flee, to leave the basement and the estate behind, yet her body refused. The entity didn't move toward her, not in a way she could measure, yet its presence pressed against her mind, subtle, invasive, feeding on her awareness. Megan's rationality shattered. She had studied fear academically, written papers on human response to stress, But nothing could prepare her for a sentience that existed outside time, outside space, observing her every thought, every micro-movement. Hours, days, or perhaps weeks passed. It was impossible to tell in the basement. Time twisted and fractured, flowing in directions that Megan could neither perceive nor control. The hallways shifted around her, twisting into impossible angles. Rooms she had already passed appeared again, slightly altered. Shadows pooled unnaturally, curling toward her, as if alive. The entity remained at the periphery, never directly confronting her, yet never leaving her. Megan tried speaking, calling out to it, demanding a response, begging for mercy. Silence answered, heavier than any scream, a pressure that crushed her lungs. She tried to retreat, tracing her steps, only to find the doors she thought she had passed, now gone, replaced by endless corridors lined with objects that defied description. Books with words that melted off the pages, mirrors reflecting scenes from her own past, faces distorted in agony, whispers echoing from nowhere, shaping themselves into the sound of her own name. Sleep became impossible. When Megan closed her eyes, she dreamed of corridors with no end, each lined with her worst memories, each inhabited by faceless figures multiplying with every blink. She awoke screaming, soaked in sweat, every nerve screaming that the basement had followed her into her mind. Food and water lost meaning. Hunger faded in comparison to the terror pressing against her from every corner. She experimented with rituals, old protective symbols scrawled in dust, whispered prayers, chanting words she barely understood. For moments, it seemed to hold back the darkness, the shadows retreating slightly. But the basement's patience was infinite. Each attempt at control only deepened its grasp, twisted the hallways tighter, extended shadows longer. The faceless entity drew closer with each passing thought, each micro-expression of fear, feeding on the energy Megan supplied unknowingly. She stumbled upon a central chamber, impossible in scale, walls lined with hundreds of masks, all faceless. The masks seemed to breathe, shimmering with an otherworldly energy. The faceless entity approached silently, moving in ways that defied logic, bending space around it. Megan's mind snapped further. She realized she could not see it directly without inviting its full presence, could not acknowledge its form without feeding it more power. Panic and comprehension collided violently. She tried to flee again, corridors stretching infinitely, turning in impossible angles, twisting back on themselves, drawing her deeper into the basement's heart. Her flashlight flickered and died, leaving her in absolute darkness, guided only by the faint pressure of awareness that pressed against her consciousness. The whispers became coherent over time, a chorus of voices indistinct, yet clear in meaning. They spoke not in words, but in intent, promising inevitability, the futility of escape, the weight of curiosity that had brought her here. Megan realized that the basement was alive, sentient, and ancient, beyond reckoning. It had grown hungry for awareness, and she was its sustenance. Her fear, her panic, her very thoughts nourished it, and the faceless entity was merely a manifestation of its will, a guardian, a sentinel, a predator that existed to remind her of her insignificance. Megan's body weakened as time passed. Days and nights blurred. Her reflection in dark puddles on the stone floors showed her, gaunt, hollow-eyed, a shadow of herself. Each glance revealed the faceless entity closer, impossibly taller, impossibly still, pressing her further into despair. She tried to leave objects behind as markers, leaving pieces of herself scattered through the halls, but the basement twisted them back into its architecture. The more she struggled, the stronger the basement became. Every corridor, every alcove, every shadow was alive, watching, moving, anticipating her actions before she could perform them. Desperation drove her further. Megan tried speaking to the entity, pleading, bargaining, demanding to understand. The entity responded only through presence, through the shifting of shadows, through corridors rearranging themselves, through the pulse of the walls and floors. Megan understood the ultimate truth. She could not defeat it. She could not outpace it. She could not deny it. The basement was eternal, and she had become part of its ecosystem, feeding its consciousness with every fleeting thought of escape. Eventually, Megan ceased trying to fight. She wandered the labyrinth, a trembling, broken figure, each step a surrender, each breath a gift to the entity. Shadows coiled around her feet, whispering voices a constant accompaniment. She touched the masks along the walls, tracing empty eye sockets, feeling the energy hum beneath her fingers. The faceless entity remained at the periphery, ever patient, ever hungry, yet calm. Its presence a constant reminder that curiosity and awareness had a cost. The last moments Megan remembered, or imagined, were of a central hall that expanded beyond comprehension, walls stretching infinitely, shadows flowing like water. She realized she had become part of the basement, a consciousness feeding its own sentience, trapped in a cycle of fear, awareness, and inevitability. The faceless entity approached one final time, and Megan understood fully that the basement had claimed her mind, her body, her very essence. She was no longer Megan Lawson. She was part of the basement, its awareness, its hunger, its patience. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond the impossible hallways, the faceless entity waited, eternal, hungry for the next mind, curious enough to cross the threshold of the basement that shouldn't exist.